Hi, welcome to Bottom Line Results. My name is Lenny Nuccio, and I'm here with Richard Greenberg, an executive coach. And Richard, thanks for being here today.
Pleasure.
And just wanted to ask you a few questions on and get your insights on leadership today.
Sure.
And what would you say are some of the major challenges that leaders are facing in this economy?
I'm probably hearing common themes around three areas. One I would just call capital. It's both the financial and the human. So while credit markets and other markets have eased up a little bit, I think that's still the challenge. On the human capital side, many clients are finding this is a great time to actually find the right talent. There's so much talent available out there.
Sure.
So they're beefing up their executive team, their leadership team, they're beefing up the management bench. And so that's been a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. The other area I would focus in on, I think, is just this area I call emotional commitment from individuals, from teams. How do you get it? How do you get it back again? And so they struggle with those kind of issues around morale and things of that nature. And third, I would say, is something that comes up pretty much all the time. I would just call it culture. I don't think many executives, many managers really have a good in-depth understanding of how a culture can ultimately derail the best plan or best strategy in the world, or actually help you along the way to achieving something really great.
So some people are seeing all these problems and challenges right now. There's really hidden opportunities.
Absolutely.
To get the right frame.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the executives or managers that I work with understand that aspect of it's a challenge, but if we do this right, we're really much better positioned for the next 2 to 4 years.
Excellent. What would you say are some of the most important leadership traits that you feel are necessary for today?
There's a lot of leadership traits. I think, again, in light of those challenges, what I would probably focus in on are things like inspirational. You know, can you be inspiring? How do you be inspiring, especially during these times of tumult and change? And in light of that, it's also a matter of being honest. So can you also basically say with some degree of certainty, here's the current situation, here's what's really happening, we're down in the foxhole, we're surrounded, here's what's going on, and then juxtapose with that, but here's how we're going to get out, here's the vision, here's where we're going. So the inspiring, the honest, and honesty, and then I would say forward-looking. So what is that picture? How can you paint that inspiring picture of the future? I think those three things are probably most critical right now.
So don't just be telling everyone, oh, it's great, it's great, it's great.
Exactly.
And they really see what's going on.
Exactly, right. You need to be able to hone in on, because the employees and the associates know it. You know, they've been through perhaps some downsizing, they've been through some tough times. You have to be able to not only recognize that, but articulate that in an honest way. And you don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to know how we're going to get out of it to the absolute detail. But you know how to say, I'm with you, I know what's going on. Here's the picture of where we're going to be in the future. Now let's get there. So you're kind of metaphorically extending your hand. I need your help. We're all in this together. We need to get there together.
So transparency, what a concept. Huh? Okay, and as an executive coach, Richard, do you have any favorite questions you tend to ask leaders?
I have a favorite question. I mean, it's not something I usually start off with, but I think my favorite question would be, what are your core personal values? That's vital for any type of goal setting that we're going to do with an executive or a manager. It's vital toward the link to behavior change. But I want to understand what is at the core of this individual in terms of what they personally value. And once we get it down to about 3, we can really move from there into setting the right kind of goals and looking at the behaviors that might need to change to get alignment with those values.
So you try to establish a base or benchmark and then move forward from there.
Yeah, I would call it more of a base of really who you are. What do you really want to accomplish? Because leaders know their core personal values. Sure. Every leader knows that value. And ultimately what's driving them is they want to fulfill those core values.
Sure. And
everybody has them. So it's a favorite question, and it also gives me some insight into the person.
You've worked, Richard, with a lot of leaders. Is there any areas of a business, no one can see everything all the time. Mm-hmm. If everyone is honest, they admit that. Mm-hmm. But is there an area that they tend to miss a lot, executives or leaders?
I think I go back to this word culture, you know, sort of the shared beliefs on the part of associates and employees about the rules for survival and the rules for prosperity and moving forward. And not enough managers, executives that I've met have that good in-depth understanding of how culture works, why it's so critical, and how it can, again, block really the best laid strategies out there or really propel you forward. So we do a lot of work around understanding that culture, going deep, and then, and I'll give an example. I mean, if the culture trusts somebody, wow, I mean, that's a tremendous advantage. If the culture doesn't trust, then how do you regain and build that back? And so, and it's going to either block, hinder, or help you in terms of what you want to achieve.
So really, just as to use a football analogy, say if one team thinks they like to run the ball a lot, and one player comes in thinking they should be throwing all the time, that
right. And again, and that's a good analogy, because the idea is that while we maybe don't want to throw all the time, maybe we want to throw a little bit more.
Sure.
And so taking some smaller steps to begin to introduce that new strategy is the way to go.
Okay, excellent. It's been said change is difficult, and we all know that. How do you tend to begin that process with a leader that maybe hasn't focused on certain areas of their business, and you recognize, wow, this is a pretty big problem, they're not even seeing it? How would you suggest they begin the process of identifying and then making those changes?
Well, in some ways, I take issue with the premise about change. I don't think change is so difficult. I don't think people necessarily, they don't want to change. I think it's the transition that they fear. It's this fear of the unknown and things like that. So when I talk with an individual who, quote unquote, wants to change themselves, or I talk with an executive about leading a major change initiative, what we talk about is what's the burning platform? What's the urgency? What's the reason for this change? And I was fortunate enough a number of years ago to do some work for NASA. And I remember interviewing and talking with people at NASA and JPL and some of the other different centers around the country. And I asked them about that sort of testosterone vision that John Kennedy had. Let's put a man on the moon by the end of the decade.
Right.
Major change, major goal, major initiative. And I talked with people, they said, that was nice. It was a positive thing, it pulled us, but what really pushed us, what really drove us toward change and accomplishment was beat the Russians, beat the Russians. So it's a combination of, are you going to use something positive, which is fine, but sometimes also the burning platform can be kind of a negative that helps push people in a different direction.
That's very good. Sometimes people want to use just one type of motivation, and usually we need both.
Right.
Great. And Richard, sometimes we get so focused within our business that we can't necessarily see outside. Why would you suggest someone maybe bring in an outside consultant or person to help them?
Well, given that I'm from the outside, gee, I really think you should, right?
Absolutely.
But I think, what do we bring? We bring perspective. We bring regular, consistent, honest feedback. And we bring ideas. I mean, creative ideas that are new, different, and that might, fit the issue or the challenge. So we're bringing some solutions to the table.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
And if you have any further questions, please give us a call at 949-788-2998 or check out our website at www.bottomlineresultscorp.com. Thank you.